Hello and welcome to the Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena.
And we're going to get into this topic today. Why do holidays feel like triggers? And I think it's going to be...
It's going to be a good one.
It'll be a good one, yeah. A lot of deep things there.
Per usual.
Yeah, but let's get into... First, we're going to go into the Skin Deep cards and see if we can pull up some questions. I'll grab a card. Ladies first, you go first.
How does competition affect our relationship, and what can we do about it?
Well, I think competition, I think with us, there's always been competition with us.
Yeah, it's kind of like this inbred characteristic, I think, in our family.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is kind of what I see is like competing for our parents' attention kind of thing. Does that make sense? I don't think so much now, but you know, in the past it was kind of like that. But now, I don't know. I think we are both kind of doing things in our own way and finding new paths. And I think watching you complete like a breathwork class and have your certification kind of built this thing in me like, oh man, it's time to go. Like I got to do it too. Like I'm the one who thought I wanted to do breathwork, and now here she is already, manifesting and living what I want to do. So in that part, it is a competition, but it's only in a way that I see with other relationships that helps motivate me to kind of like a gym partner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I think we just like push each other.
Yeah.
But it's never like, I got to one up you.
Yeah.
Or I want to do it and I don't want you to succeed at it. It's more like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to push it this much harder. How much harder are you going to push it?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say it's something like that. That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah.
What continues to connect us is my question.
Our path to self-discovery.
Yeah. It's pretty basic one for us now, just because we seem to be in alignment with each other more and more the more we talk and connect, right?
Yeah, I would say that's an easy one.
Yeah, it's too easy.
Yeah.
So back to that topic, which is why do holidays feel like triggers? Recently, we had to celebrate Mother's and Father's Day, and for me, it brought up some triggers. And I was having a conversation with a friend, and he had what we'll just call an argument or a conflict with his spouse or his wife. And it was in regards to not knowing about a Mexican Mother's Day that was before traditional American or United States Mother's Day. And really brought up, she said, you didn't even recognize or acknowledge, the Mother's Day. And his response was, well, I'm not even Mexican. I didn't grow up with that. So why do I have to, you never said anything about it. We never celebrated that. Why are you celebrating? I'm not going to do that stuff. I'm not even Mexican. And I thought to myself, wow, you could have handled that differently. Originally, I mean, in the past, I probably would have agreed with him, but he could have handled that differently with a little bit more grace. And I said, well, what if you said, hey, well, first of all, I brought up that he has some, mother wounds, and we both do because we know each other very well. And I said, you have some significant mother wounds that would make Mother's Day very hard. And I said, would you agree? And he said, yes. And I said, so maybe when Mother's Day comes around, you get all this anxiety kind of like I do. And I was just, basically explaining myself because that's something that I had just realized. And I said, you have a lot of deep hurt around Mother's Day because of your mom. And maybe you're transferring some of that to your wife. And Mother's Day for me is really more about celebrating my mom more than it is about my wife for some reasons. But I also understand the significance of celebrating the woman that's raising your kids and helping them to make sure that she feels special. But really it comes down to me celebrating with my mom. And I really brought up some stuff that I hurt with. And so I said, hey, do you think it has anything to do with that? And he just was like, oh, yeah. Like it hit him like a ton of bricks. And I said, so maybe if you are aware of that, now that you recognize that, you might have a little bit more grace for your partner because, you know, that's her day and she wants to feel special and it's not a great day for you. And you really probably aren't aware of why you have so much hurt behind that. So, and the same thing with Father's Day. This, you know, last past weekend, I contacted our dad and was like, hey, Dad, come out and we're having a barbecue and we're camping at this place. And, you know, we do it every year for the last 15 years. And he's been able to show up a couple of times, but not always, you know.
Not consistent.
Yeah. Less than he hasn't shown up as much as he's not shown up. So I called him a week ahead of time and said, hey, Dad, I'm doing this, you know, barbecue and camping close by your house. And if you'd come by, it'd be great. We can spend some time and kids and all that stuff. And he's, yeah. Well, you know, I'll show up. And I just thought, oh, this is going to be great, you know? And so I built up this whole expectation. And on Friday or Thursday, I was checking into this campsite and I was like, oh, I'm going to call my dad just to make sure. And I couldn't get a hold of him. Mm-hmm. And Friday, I was like, well, maybe he's just busy. And Friday I called, couldn't get a hold of him. And same thing on Saturday. And I was just, it started to make me feel all of these things as I did as a kid, of like the times where, you know, it was his weekend for me to spend with him. And I was waiting for him to pick me up at Mom's house and he didn't show, he didn't call, and I'm waiting and I have all these same anxieties of just not showing up. But
so you could feel that in your body like this.
I wasn't really like, I knew I was feeling it, but I wasn't really tapping into it. I wasn't aware. I wasn't being present with it. I was just like, oh man, this is
disappointing.
Disappointing. And probably about 1 o'clock on Saturday, I came to the assumption of like, he's just not coming. And so what I did was just focus on the people that were there. And my nieces were there and one of my sons was there. And so we kind of just did Father's Day and did tie-dye and a different, you know, taking pictures in the park and jumping on the bouncies and all those things. And I had a great day. And by the time I had reckoned, you know, other people were like, hey, is your dad coming? And I was like, I don't know. You never know with my dad. And lo and behold, 8:30 at night. We were supposed to be there sometime during the daytime and it was, you know, pretty late. I didn't expect him to come in, and he calls me and he says, hey, I'm here. And I'm like, oh man, he said, I'm driving around. I can't find you. And so I was happy that he was there, but at the same time, I was like kind of just disappointed. Like, now you're showing up. But I just made the decision to just enjoy the time that he did show up. And so we ended up having like a great conversation, a great time. Gave him his card. He talked with everybody that was there. And when he shows up great. And so one of the things that I remembered and thought of was something that Jay Shetty said, which was something that he made reference to about his wife, which was her spontaneity. And my dad has that same thing. He's like super spontaneous, just, you know, in the moment, has a great time, makes people laugh, quick-witted, but doesn't show up to things on time and doesn't always sometimes show up. But that makes him who he is, really. So I could either be mad at him for who he is or just love the parts and the good parts that he gave to me. So I was able to kind of think about that, you know, and step away and have some sort of awareness of these things happen to me, and more, you know, these triggers happen, and where's the, you know, the treasure in this trigger. And I really just had to think, man, this is something for me. And how I realized it in my friend was the same thing with his mom, and how all these holidays hold different stories for us.
Yeah, they hold history.
Mm-hmm. And every year I started to think about just meditating and was thinking about how every year I get these feelings that are just kind of subconscious around different things that have happened through my life around those holidays. And so I'm just now realizing, like, man, not only for myself and how I react and how I almost made it be what was my wife and my kids made it to be a fantastic weekend. It had this tint to it that was negative.
This undercurrent.
Yeah, this undercurrent, because I allowed that story from previous things to kind of hold weight.
Yeah.
And I just really had to give grace to that, you know, to Dad, and just like, you know, he is great in his own way and doing the best that he can. And I don't have to let that hold too much power over me.
Yeah. And I think, you know, what the main thing too is, like, most of this is very unconscious, because anytime a holiday rolls around, a lot of times there is like this history with those holidays, you know, as kids, whether it was not being with one of your parents, or there was just so much opportunity for disappointment, quote unquote.
Christmas, the gifts you didn't get.
Yeah, or whatever.
Big brother or sister got a better gift than you or something. Yeah, whatever.
At the lowest, you know, or it's that you didn't get picked up. or somebody didn't show up for you, or, whatever the conflict was.
Yeah.
And so the holidays can just have this tint, like you said, and this undercurrent that's running. And if you're not aware of, like, there's a story here that's actually behind this holiday for me, you can just start acting out, or you can just be really pissy, or you can just be really short, or whatever. And the thing is, like, dad not showing up or building all this anxiety, I'm like, is he going to answer my call? Is he going to come? It was able to bring up, like, wow, there's actually something deeper here that has nothing to do with today. It has to do with something really old, and just bringing awareness to that. And when he showed up, which dad, that's how he does it. He comes, everything's put away and gone. And he's like, I'm here. Why are you mad?
Yeah.
And so at that moment, it's like, there's the pivot point,
Yeah.
right? Because you're aware that wow, I have something deeper here that I'm really upset about, the times that you didn't come get me, or the disappointment that you didn't show up. And this is just bringing that up for me. And so there's two choices. You can just ruminate about how pissed off you are that has happened again, or that you had to remember that was the history.
And blow up this Father's Day by yelling at my dad when he got there.
Yeah, blow it up, tell him he's not welcome, or I don't even want you here, or just sit over on the side drinking a beer or whatever, and just quiet. What's wrong with you? Nothing, whatever. And you can sit in that, or you can be like, I'm going to maybe enjoy this moment that I have and be able to see this through a different light and see him for the man he is. He is here.
Yep.
But also, you're going to have to remember that thing that you unpacked.
Yeah.
Which is there is a deep hurt here.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you can just be like, hey, why don't you just choose a better road and take the high road? You also realize there is something there. And so there is something for you to do.
Yeah. And the idea is not to suppress.
Right.
Exactly. I think it's kind of brings me into the awareness of taking those 5 steps that I talked about, which is the pre-contemplation, because I didn't even know. I kind of knew that was something, but I didn't realize how. And the second I unpacked that a little bit more, I was able to kind of recognize how it had affected me, And so then going to pre-contemplation, contemplation, that's where I was. And then taking action. So I guess the action was, hey, I'm not going to, react right here. I'm going to respond and have a good time. But I'm still going to take this and work through this process and figure out how it affects me in my everyday life.
Yeah. So
and all the things. I think what probably something healthy that I might try to adapt is just kind of like when I walk into a doorway, I kind of do a self-check, just like with holidays, like, holidays.
The holiday self-check.
Yeah. Valentine's Day. What is it? Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays. Yeah. There's just Christmas. All these things hold times, and we're so subconscious to it. There's things that happen to me around Christmas time that every year I don't even know it, but I'm kind of on edge.
Yeah, definitely.
Because something that happened in previous years.
Yeah. I think for years, in my family with my husband and kids, it was always the holidays. They knew, like, oh, she's going into that mode, which was, I would just get this edge.
So this is something like a story for you. Like, this is an example. Okay.
This was an example for me, is that for like probably decades, every time the holidays would come, I would get this edge. And I always thought it was because, it's just so busy and there's just so many things to do and it's very stressful. But that really wasn't the truth. The truth was that there was a lot of history around holidays that was disappointment. We came from, a divorced family. And so it's like, are we going here? Are we going there? Are they not coming? Are they coming? What's happening? And it was just always this stress and wrought with disappointment or expectations, unmet expectations. And so I carried that for decades until I realized, like, oh, this is a thing that's happening. It's not the stress of wrapping presents or whatever. It's tied to what the holidays have represented for me in some ways, not every holiday, but in some ways over time.
Yeah.
And so, becoming aware of it is when there's the pivot point of, like, how do I show myself grace and how do I make a different choice about how I'm going to move into these, situations, whether it's birthday, Christmas.
Whatever. Yeah. You have a hard time with birthdays. You don't even like to have birthday parties.
Oh, I'm like the person who does not want a birthday party. And it wasn't until this year I realized why.
Treasures,
so many treasures. And then it's like, oh man, there's work to do with this. As I thought I was done with all this kind of work. But it's representing, it's bringing to light something that that you have that you can, excavate.
But open up about that a little bit, specifically about like birthdays, because if you like, what is that for you? Have you, this is something that maybe needs to be worked through. So have you attempted that, or is that something that you've put a pin in? Because it's something that you've mentioned to me that you're aware of.
Well, it comes down to, really, it was one big memory when I was little, and, I was living with Dad and was not living with Mom. And she had made me this birthday cake and brought it to the house. But there was I don't know what was around the timing of all of that, like in the day. And there was friction between my stepmom and my dad and my mom. And so there was like, you can't come in, you can't bring this cake here. And so that was very confusing for me. And, and then the cake came in and I was looking at it, but it was like wrought with like tension.
Yeah.
And so I always looked at my birthday as like, oh, it's tension, it's disappointment, it's I'm hurting someone else, or I'm hurting that, it was just like, this is uncomfortable. And so I realized like birthdays for me were like, no.
What uncomfortable? What's the other? What other feeling was it other than just
Sadness.
How old were you?
It was sadness. I was probably like 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. And I knew that I had hurt my mom, and that there was tension between my parents and my stepmom, my dad, and my mom. And I was in the middle of it, and it made me very sad. So to me, birthdays equaled sadness.
Yeah.
And me having to be something for someone else, otherwise they'd be disappointed or whatever. It was like pressure. It was pressure. And so I avoided birthday parties at all costs, even until I was 50.
Yeah, that's a recent thing.
Yeah. And so my family knew, like, do not throw her a birthday party.
Yeah.
There's like once that I've thrown myself a birthday party, and that was it. But what I had to do was like go back to that little girl and be like, it's this, what do you need? And you're not 7 anymore. You're actually a grown person, and you can make a different decision about how you want to celebrate yourself. And so I've chosen to do it differently, and I'm okay with having a birthday party and, doing all that. But it was still
celebrate life. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like celebrating another year.
Yeah.
I mean, it means something different when you're an adult,
Yeah.
You're a kid, you can't wait. When you're an adult, you're like,
oh, another one?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But why are we like that?
It brought I needed awareness around what was the undercurrent of like, don't throw me a party, So, I mean, and I think that the holidays are just they're wrought with so much opportunity.
I mean, we're destined to interact with people that we have a deep connection to.
Yeah. And
in most cases, even siblings, or there's some kind of hurt that we haven't voiced.
Yeah.
And even between you and I, there's things that we've had arguments and we didn't voice until we're, grown ass adults.
Yeah.
And then we totally misunderstood each other growing up.
Yeah. It's just communication. It's courage.
Courage to look within, see what the real story is, see if you want to rewrite it or if you want to just keep living that old one. And, how it affects other people around you. Because when you have that undercurrent of stress or sadness or fear, that starts to affect your field, and who comes into that field, the people that you're closest to. And that's not what you want. But if you're not even aware that it's happening or why, then what can you do? Well, yeah. And you have to own it for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And that's your authentic truth. But the other part of it is, and that's something that another part of unpacking for me that came to my awareness was that other people, like for instance, my spouse may have her own reaction to Father's Day.
Yeah.
Or in your case, your kids or your husband may have other reactions towards birthday. It may be important to them and they may feel sad that they can't celebrate yours.
Yeah.
But we don't know what we're doing to them by not allowing them to celebrate us.
Yeah.
So there's other sides to it, but I think the key to awareness is recognizing how we affect others. I mean, a good part is how things affect us and how the things that have happened to us affected us and how it's basically plays out every day with how we react and respond to people. But also giving other people the grace to have their own experiences and their own hurts around that particular holiday, and give space for that, because during Christmas or during Thanksgiving, other people got their own hurts on it, and you're walking to it with yours.
Yeah.
Right?
Or bumping into each
You're
other's
bumping
hurts.
into each other with each other's hurts during these critical points where we all have tension with each other because we don't truly talk.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately, we just have to connect with ourselves and work through those things, and that will hopefully lead to connecting with other people. Because I think, like we said before, you can only connect with others as deeply as you've connected with yourself.
Yeah. And, I love how you talk to your friend and we're like, because normally, let me tell you, the dude conversation that would ensue is like, why should you remember Mexican Mother's Day? Yeah, man. And instead going,
Yeah, there's another way to handle that.
And there's another way to handle that. And I know you so well that I know that it's possible that Mother's Day for you could probably be something pretty painful. And giving him this opportunity to go, oh, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't even think about it like that.
Yeah.
So when I attached it, he was like, whoa. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, boom.
Yeah.
Like, that's true. And if it is, how do you think that affects how you feel about Mother's Day in general?
Yeah.
And your wife is also celebrating Mother's Day.
Or how you treat your wife.
Yeah. It's like, what is the undercurrent to Mother's Day? And becoming aware of it may make him more available to hear her, because he's aware of how he feels about it and maybe not transferring that unconsciously. So I think that's really beautiful because, when you do have a person who has even just slightly more awareness, who has the courage and the vulnerability to say, is it possible that maybe you have a feeling about XYZ that could be affecting how you're, responding in that situation? And that gives them an opportunity to be like, maybe.
Yeah.
And if there is, there's an opportunity.
Yeah. It's really just recognizing, a moment where you're like, wow, I affected somebody. I said something. I could have said it differently. And who knows what her experience for Mother's Day is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it could be anything.
Yeah. So, we don't know everyone's stories. We only see the movie through our own theater, and
how it's affecting
how
us.
It affects us. Instead of asking like, how is this affecting you and why? Why is it bothering you so much?
Yeah. The difficult conversations, most people don't want to have them.
No, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. For me, for many years. And now I can't do anything but want to do those things. And it's so annoying. It's got to be.
Tell me all your deepest hurts.
It's got to be annoying to the people who aren't in that,
Yeah, I think it's a little bit probably annoying.
So,
ooh, you're upset. Let's look at that.
Well, and I think that's what we can come across as very judgy or, offering unsolicited, counseling or something. It's not really that. That wasn't my intention for speaking to that. It was really just two men having conversations, because the reason why I brought it up is because I just had that feeling about my mom and why I'm having things and the feelings I'm having towards my wife and that all that. I've just started questioning the thought process behind that. And once I did, then it gave me some time to, that
a new lens.
Yeah. The pause between stimulus and response, right? I was like, oh, there's more than one person here.
Yeah.
And her experience is different than my experience. So I want what I want. She wants what she wants. But how do we come together? You really have to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah.
Or have a tremendous amount of, patience and grace for other people.
Yeah.
To not allow them to affect you in a deep way, to give power, to a situation.
You have to have patience and grace for yourself first.
Yeah.
In order to have it for anyone else.
Well, like we talked about it earlier, if you can't ask, if you have something that you're needing from your partner or from somebody, you have to be willing to give that to yourself before you can ask for it from somebody else.
Yeah.
Because that's codependency if you can't.
Yeah.
So really in these situations, you just gotta, the things that you need and you want and you gotta have, realizing that you have to be able to give that to everything you need is within yourself. and you have to stop, relying on other people to give those things to you because it's fair and it's right, and right or wrong. Like those things just that's the ego.
Yeah.
And
you can be right and alone.
Mm-hmm.
Dead right.
Yeah. Dead right. You can be dead right and alone. Yeah. So I think it's really just finding grace, for yourself first and foremost, and having that pause and just trying to think about what kind of reaction do I want to have here? Cause I could have had a totally different weekend. And, because Mother's Day had played out the way that it did and put in a ton of self-reflection, Father's Day was a little bit, I thought was going to be easier, but it actually turned out to be harder. But when the pivot point hit, I was able to make the right decision. And so I have to pat myself a little bit on the back for that, because I was like, wow, I could have been so bad for everybody and angry. And I could have been, pissy to my kids and to my wife, because the thing that I wanted most was my dad. Because again, really the Father's Day wasn't so much about me. It was really about my dad for me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't live with him like you did until later in life. And so I missed a lot of that part. So that those parts, I didn't spend a lot of Father's Day. I actually don't have one memory of Father's Day with Dad.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a thing. Christmases and those kind of things we do, but that doesn't. So for me, I think ways that what kind of actions can we take in order to, work through these things? Because we're going to put a pin in it and not deal with it in those times, because there's obviously, or not obviously, but it's not always obvious.
Moment.
It's not a perfect moment to deal with it in that time. But I do think that I do want to have a conversation with my dad and about some real things, because this brought up a lot of stuff, and not to make him feel bad, but just to have my truth and let him know how I felt about it. And I wrote him a pretty nice, a Father's Day card, just thanking him for all the sacrifices that he made. Cause I know, coming from another country and starting a whole new family gave us a ton of opportunity. And I'm truly grateful for all of that, but there's some things even still that we need to work through. So what would you recommend I do in order to kind of begin the process of healing that part and approaching the conversation with Dad?
So I think like what we can do, there's a lot of things that we can do, and you have to just kind of pick one that flows for you and that you can connect with. But one of the things I love doing is, the journaling, where it's like expressive writing.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, you would take the subject of like being disappointed, or, him not showing up, or whatever it is, whatever the sticky point is, and be able to write just free writing on that for 20 minutes.
Nobody's going to read it.
No, it's not. You're not auditing it. You're not going to read it later, flow. And you're not going to criticize it. You're just going to free flow write like what is happening, what was happening for you.
It's much different than journaling.
Much different, yeah.
Yep.
And then, do that 20 minutes,
yep.
right? It's just letting the energy move.
20 minutes.
20 minutes, and then doing that 4 days in a row.
Yeah.
For 20 minutes.
And that's a proven thing. They did a whole study on that.
Yes, it's a thing. So 4 days in a row, 20 minutes at a time, and you can watch that subject evolve.
Yeah.
You can watch it move through your system. So it's no longer this like piece that you're holding on to in your body. The other thing is, like we've talked about before, is the RAIN method.
Yeah, I love that.
Which is, I think, partly what you were doing is recognizing. So RAIN is our recognizing. Allowing the feeling to be there, like whatever, like, whoa, this is like disappointment, or sadness or whatever.
Yep.
Allowing it to be there, and then inquiring and investigating, like, what is this about? It's about disappointment, right?
Yep.
Or it's about whatever it is. And then really nurturing yourself. So nurturing that young boy that, had unmet expectations, or someone didn't show up. And how do you show up now for him? Yourself in that moment, kind of reparenting that part of yourself, and really nurturing, asking, what do you need? What can I do for you right now?
Yeah.
And that method I love. It works really well. And of course, like, you can write a letter, because not everybody has their dad that's there.
Yeah.
Or they may not be a safe person to talk to.
Yeah.
It may not be the best thing for you to be like, listen, this is really disappointing me. That may not be received.
It doesn't ever have to get to the person. It's it's just letting it out.
Letting it out. Like
Voicing
writing a letter about whatever it is, burn it.
Yep.
Whatever you need to do, but it's just moving that energy and letting it just exit.
When you say burn it, you mean like writing a letter, like a ceremonial type thing, where
like a burning ceremony.
Yeah,
and you
write the letter and burn, so nobody has to.
Burn it. Yeah, like, I'm letting this go.
Yeah.
I'm letting it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
should go
has
up
some
with the smoke.
significance, yeah,
Yeah.
to letting it go.
Yeah. I love burning.
Let that
ceremony.
shift go.
Let that shift go. Let that shift go.
So yeah, that was some.
No more Mary Shiftmas.
Yeah, we're gonna have to let that shift go. Well, that was great. I really appreciate talking about those things because it hit home, recently, and it was like, man, I really needed to work through those things. So it's good to talk about it, and hopefully some of you guys can take something from these stories and use them in your everyday lives. And that's another episode of Let That Shift Go. I'm Noel.
I'm Lena.
And we want to just thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the next episode.